Rob, what is our fourth main topic today?
John, our fourth main topic comes to us from Chase. Hello, John and crew. Well, it's finally over. She-Hulk aired its final episode of season 1, and I've never felt so confused in my life. Why take us on this very weird ride of an episode just to make a joke that honestly fell flat like this entire series? Have you seen it? What are your thoughts on the finale? And do you think they'll make a season 2? Thanks, and bring on the filthy.
All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Chase. And guys, just so you know, we no longer do a after show for She-Hulk just because we kind of fell off of it. But we said we'd talk about the final. So we're going to talk about the She-Hulk finale here in a spoilery way. So let's bring up that warning. If you guys have not seen or don't want to know what happened in the She-Hulk episode, because we're going to talk about the episode, but also kind of give our overall thoughts, a post-mortem, if you will, on the season 1 of She-Hulk now that it's all wrapped up. If you don't want to know anything about it, just mute your computer, and then once the spoiler warning comes down, then you can unmute your computer. But we are going to talk about it in some spoilery details, because I know a lot of you guys watched it already. All right, let's start with the episode itself. Let me start with something positive here. My biggest complaint, nay, really my one true complaint that has made this show a disappointment for me about She-Hulk has been it's a comedy that's not funny. And that's been it for me, right? Like, I get the premise of the show. I like the premise of the show. I see what they're trying to do. I think they're heading in the right direction. The problem is, to do all those things, you've got to be funny to make those other things work. For all these other things and setups and designs to work, your content's got to be funny. And it's not. It just, for me, and it's all subjective. Maybe some of you find it hilarious, and if so, that's awesome. For me, it's just not been funny. So with this one episode, there have been a few moments. The walk of shame, the twerking.
Sure.
There have been moments of true hilarity. I will say this for the finale. I don't think there were more laugh moments in any other episode of She-Hulk than last night's. There were, honestly, 4 or 5 moments in that episode that I laughed out loud. Like including, but not necessarily limited to, first of all, the Wakanda Forever shout out. It goes, no, our visual effects guys have moved on to my next project. And then you hear the Wakandan drums. Doo-doo-doo. And like, oh my God, that was perfectly set up. When he says to She-Hulk, all right, we'll see you on the big screen. And she's like, really? It's like, no. So yeah, I'm not going to see She-Hulk on the big screen. What were some of the other, there was a couple of other really, really funny moments. I'm trying to remember. We were just talking about them and now I'm freezing on them. At any rate, number of moments in this thing that were legitimately funny and I enjoyed and great. That being said, this whole season had one story to it. Somebody's after She-Hulk's blood. I mean, they set it up right in the first episode that the blood, her and Bruce's blood is valuable, even though it has to match with a perfect genetic copy of their family. Still, our blood's important. Bruce destroyed it. Then we get this Hulk King character. A lot of people speculated it might have been the leader. We were pretty sure it wasn't going to be, especially going into Captain America. But, you know, the Hulk King and the blood and blah. And it was all for nothing. It was for nothing. The whole storyline ultimately ended up being nothing. To the point where they did the big fourth wall break thing. The type of thing you described. I remember before the show even started, like, I need to have a scene where, like in the comics, when she literally comes out of the comic world and goes to the comic book writers, and so they kind of went for that. I get it, but when they came back, the story was wrapped. The guy's in handcuffs. It's like, so what was the point of the whole story? It literally, you realize the whole point of it was for nothing, which then goes back to, well, then the show better have been funny, and it wasn't funny. And it is, and let's talk about the fourth wall break for a second. When I thought for a second that I had accidentally hit my remote control, went back to the home screen of Disney Plus, and I realized that Jennifer was coming out of them, like, all right, okay, I see what you're doing here. It didn't work though. Again, you can do it in theory, and that's a great theory, but then you've got to write stuff that is funny and makes us laugh and is part of that whole fourth wall break. And everything from her walking into the writer's room, which, by the way, some of those were the real writers of the show. Mm-hmm. Walking into the writer's room, nothing that was said in there was funny. When she finally ultimately goes to then the waiting area and she has to sign the NDA, I have signed that pad, by the way. I've been in that room. But anyway, and she goes in to see, and I get the gag that Kevin Feige is actually just some all-knowing robot thing. Okay, I'm willing to go with that if you make it really funny. And there were a couple of good lines. And then, by the way, the Scar introduction at the end, it was so random and with nothing. Hi guys, I'm back. Oh, and here's my son Scar. And then that's it. It's like, what's the point of that? And I realized when Matt shows back up, I realized why everything with Matt from the last episode to this episode works. It's because Matt is the only normal character in the show. Every other character is a caricature other than Jen. And so when you have Jen with Matt having real discussions, like the joking the family, like trying to find out how much money he makes, that was some of the most real and lighthearted and fun stuff that the entire series has had. And I realize it's because he's being treated as just a normal character. And I thought maybe the show could have used a little bit more of that. Look, at the end of the day, I did not hate She-Hulk. I loved the first episode. The Daredevil episode was handled quite well. The finale had its moments. I thought Tatiana Maslany was great in it. There are a number of positive things I can say about the show. But at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to the same thing I've been harping on the whole time. It's a comedy that wasn't funny. And so I unfortunately left still feeling disappointed. Again, I'm not trashing on it. I didn't hate it. But at the end of the day, I think it was a big missed opportunity, kind of represented when they did the big fourth wall break. There was a lot of stuff they could have done there that was really fun. They didn't.
We want to take a moment and thank a sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. Guys, my wife Ann and I love using HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. When you subscribe to HelloFresh, you can check Save Money off of your fall to-do list. HelloFresh is 25% cheaper than takeout and even less expensive than grocery shopping too. And HelloFresh works with your ever-changing schedule. Plans are flexible and you can choose your meals for the week, update your preferences, or change your delivery day all in the HelloFresh app. Now, you know Ann and I are both working professionals, so when it comes to dinner time, it can be a bit of a challenge. We don't really have time to cook and we don't want to eat out all the time. And that's why HelloFresh comes through so clutch for us. Not only do we get to eat delicious, nutritious food, but Ann and I both have a lot of fun getting to cook together, following the easy-to-follow steps in getting the meals made. So go to HelloFresh.com/Campea65 and use the code Campea65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/Campea65 using the code Campea65 for 65% off plus free shipping.
Anyway, Rob, number one, what did you think about the episode? And what's your overall kind of end thought of the series as a whole?
Look, I thought the episode was mildly amusing. But this is going to seem really weird to say. You know, when you just pointed out where it went to the Disney Plus screen?
Well, that was clever because it fooled me. It really did fool me for a second.
It was clever, but here's this is going to seem so weird, and people are going to look at me and go, Rob, what are you talking about? When She-Hulk kicks out one of the windows and like climbs down, my problem with that kind of a fourth wall break is that's not breaking the fourth wall. That's changing your internal universal reality, because it's one thing like when She-Hulk was talking to the writer or the artist and breaking the wall between, literally the fourth wall is here between audience and whatever. When you have She-Hulk, how would She-Hulk even get on an electronic screen? That wasn't the kind of fourth wall break. It doesn't work. It was fun to see, but from a meta level, it's not something that worked for me. I'm like, oh, it's clever. It's kind of fun. What really bothered me about the show, but to me, it's the writers once again missing the point of what a fourth wall break does and how it works. My problem with this show is that you can have the greatest comedy in the world also still illuminates the truth of being a human being. And we recognize ourselves in the comedy, whether it's physical comedy, whether it's character comedy, situational comedy, slapstick comedy. It's funny because we as human beings recognize it. Now, here was a show, a She-Hulk show. It starts out as a comedy, but the premise of the show is you have a normal, ordinary person becoming a superhero. And what happens when a superhero has to navigate daily life? that in itself could be comedy gold. And the comic book certainly was very comedic. John Byrne's run on the comics was great. The setup for this show was ripe to be funny. It had so much, it was all right there. And I felt like every episode they were trying, it felt like the writing staff was all on different pages. And the show was frustrating because, like you said, it wasn't funny enough. And I didn't know what this show was supposed to be from week to week. And if you want to take the sitcom mode, great sitcoms have their underlying premise, whether it's Cheers, whether it's Frasier, whether it was MASH, whether it's The Office, and I haven't seen much of The Office, but it's called The Office. So it's like, I would assume, John, that many of the episodes take place in that office. They might get out of it, but it's the unique human interaction, the funny human interaction that takes place within the milieu. And I thought that this really missed it, because we as an audience, we had to readjust every episode. Like, oh, wait a minute, what show is this we're watching now? Because it just seemed different every episode. And this was a very meta talk about wall breaking. We're gonna go to the Disney lot and go to the offices of Marvel. And I'm like, that was kind of neat, but it was also weird. And it, again, had nothing to do with the rest of the show. So it was yet another show. And it's like, I think back to episodes that have done that before. One of my favorite science fiction shows ever on TV was a show called UFO. And they did this back in the 69 to 71, when the characters find themselves on a movie set that is their shadow control headquarters. Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
One of the great movies of all time. Dan Murrell brings this up in his review of She-Hulk. They do a big wall break where suddenly they're making a movie. They're not in a movie anymore. And this trope has become something that people have used before. And I think the show, like you said, I didn't hate it. I just wish it was better.
Well, see, the other thing too is, well, as far as the fourth wall break thing too, I would say in the comics with her talking to the comic writer, that translated into a TV show. The one-to-one comparison would be she's got to come out of her story and talk to the creators of the show. So I'm okay with that. It's just they didn't do anything with it. But you brought up something that I totally forgot about too. We're talking about the whole Hulk King storyline, right? Go back to the very first episode. The first episode set it up and made us believe that the setup was, this is going to be a show, while a legal sitcom, it's also going to be about Jen going on her journey to getting to the place where she embraces being a hero.
Yeah.
The entire first episode was about Bruce telling her that and all that kind of stuff. And really, that never comes up. It comes up a little bit in the Daredevil episode, but it's just Daredevil saying to her kind of the same thing Bruce said to her. And we never got that point where she goes, okay, I now, like, it just, they set it up saying this is what this is about, and then they kind of abandoned it. Then they set up this Hulk King storyline, and by the end of the finale, they really just kind of abandoned it. It ultimately didn't mean anything.
And also what you just pointed out, Matt Murdock reinforces the idea of being a hero doesn't mean when he gives her the speech about, you can do things, you can do both. And that was a great counterpoint or a reaffirmation of what Bruce said in the first episode. And I really liked that because the rest of this show was just all over the place. And Titania, what was that all about? I mean, that could have been interesting as well, because
that was such a waste.
It was such a waste of Jamil. What a great comedic talent. That was one note. And again, I really think that this show shows what happens when a writing staff is not up to the task that they've been given.
And you know what? I think it's also a thing about, it's something that Marvel had no experience in. Marvel has great experience in trying to inject levity and humor into their things. And they've done, this will be mixed opinions, but to me, they've done a great job of that most of the time. They've never tried to just straight up do a comedy.
No.
And it kind of shows here. So anyway, guys, question is for you. What did you think about the finale of She-Hulk, and what ultimately did you think about the show overall? For me, I didn't hate it, but I ended up it's another Marvel one that I was a little bit disappointed in. I thought there was a lot more they could have done, especially with somebody as talented as Tatiana Maslany and some of the opportunities they had there. But maybe you loved it, and if so, that's awesome. Whatever you guys thought about it, jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there.